as an astounding 447 years. Even after this was pointed out by the Inspector General, the Department decided to continue with this project. I was also surprised that the entire Department of Defense uses construction cost indices that are 25 to 40% more than similar commercially built facilities. My friends, with savings of only 25% in the military construction program, which could represent an annual savings of almost $4 billion, we could build significant capabilities and really provide a result that would correct years of neglect and allow us to make prudent strategic investments in diverse areas around the world. Good enough is not good enough for the fine men and women in uniform. On a final note, we're in the final year of implementing the BRAC program, and there are many recommendations that contain significant risk in completing by the statutory deadline of September 2011. I want to be very clear that any risk to the mission of the United States in this time of war needs to be properly limited to ensure the success of our efforts. I'll not jeopardize patient care for our wounded warriors if their care will be impacted by a BRAC move. And I look forward to our witnesses discussing the risk of the BRAC moves to determine if additional time is necessary to properly complete the remaining BRAC recommendations. Joining us today to discuss these issues are four distinguished individuals. Dr. Dorothy Robine, Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Installations and Environment. We also have the Honorable Catherine Hammock, Assistant Secretary of the Army, Installations, Energy, and Environment. The Honorable Jacqueline Fannensteel, Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Energy, Installations, and Environment. And the Honorable Terry Yonkers, Assistant Secretary of the Air Force, Installations, Environment, and Logistics. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you all for your service to our country, and thank you so much for taking time to share your experience and expertise with us this afternoon. I know our members are going to appreciate it and learn a great deal from your testimony. And now I'd like to recognize the ranking member, Ms. Bordallo, for any comments she may have. Ms. Bordallo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And to all our witnesses, I look forward this afternoon to your testimonies. Today we are going to discuss a critical component of our military's readiness, which is the Department of Defense's military construction program. The fiscal year 2012 President's budget request for military construction and BRAC is $14.7 billion. However, this represents a 21% reduction in military construction funding over the previous fiscal year. This amount includes necessary investments to modernize aging facilities, construct new facilities, accommodate the realignment of military forces abroad to bases within the United States, and complete the 2005 base closure recommendations. I do remain concerned about the 21% reduction in military construction funding over the previous year. I recognize that as BRAC 2005 winds down, the construction requirements will diminish as well. But we appear to be taking a short-sighted approach to sustaining these new facilities by not funding sustainment to the Department's own standards. Military construction is a proven jobs creator. In a time of economic downturn, I hope the Department and each of the services will continue their efforts to modernize their current facilities that warrant such investments. On Guam, for instance, we are beginning the significant military buildup. Secretary Fannensteel, I know that task orders were recently awarded after the signing of the programmatic agreement, and I am pleased to see major construction, groundbreaking, finally taking place. The military buildup on Guam is not only a job creator, but is important to our national security interests in the Asia-Pacific region. We live on a tough block on the world stage, and having freedom to access from Guam is hard to quantify. Although the military buildup on Guam requires tangible progress in Japan, I believe, as Admiral Willard testified to the full committee last week, that we are seeing signs of tangible progress, and there will be a number of milestones along the way. Further, I would reiterate the Admiral's point that the Japanese, despite the horrific disaster they have experienced, remain committed to the Guam International Agreement. As we move forward, I know this committee will continue its strong support for this strategically important move, and we must continue to take steps to ensure that this buildup is done right. Our hearing is also going to focus on the department's and each service's effort to diversify their installation energy demand. It is important to note that our energy conservation and alternative energy development efforts both support our warfighter in an operational capacity as well as reduce demand on our installations. But today, we'll be focusing only on our installations. It is estimated that our military installations spend nearly $4 billion per year in energy costs. Finding ways to reduce this cost and diversify our energy portfolio while still protecting readiness will improve our national security by reducing demand on foreign oil as well as reducing costs. I am interested in what efforts, as part of the Secretary of Defense's Efficiencies Initiative, have been focused on reducing costs through alternative energy savings. I feel this is something that needs to be continued to be addressed, and I know this committee wants to work with the department to make these efforts successful. Finally, I want to hear more from each of the services about their ability to finalize their plans for completing BRAC moves by the end of this fiscal year, which is a mere 6 months from now. What steps are the services taking to complete their BRAC moves on schedule, and can all the moves be completed on time without unnecessary cost increases or unwarranted impacts on local communities? If not, what action is the department contemplating to ensure that local communities are not overburdened? And what tools is the department providing the services to complete their BRAC actions in a timely fashion? We want to know how this committee can help make this effort successful. So again, Mr. Chairman, I thank you, and again, I feel this hearing is very important to the readiness of our forces. Having the facilities needed to complete missions is essential, and I look forward to the questions and the testimonies.
Thank you, Ms. Bordello. And as we discussed prior to the hearing, I ask unanimous consent that we dispense with the 5-minute rule for this hearing and depart from regular order so that members may ask questions during the course of the discussion. I think this will provide a roundtable type forum and will enhance the dialogue on these very important issues. Without objection, so ordered. I want to thank all of our witnesses for being here. We're looking forward to your comments. I think I've explained to each of you privately that we have a little different format. It's a very bipartisan committee. We work very well together. And rather than having the complete staccato kind of questioning you get in a lot of committees, if one of our members, it's their time to ask a question, somebody has a brief follow-up, we'll allow them to do that, even if it's out of turn, just to keep that train of thought. Also, at the end, if there's anything else you want to say or correct that you said, don't think you're in a box and can't do that. We're going to give you plenty of time to do it. If someone says something and you'd like to extrapolate on what they said, feel free to let me know, and we're happy to recognize you. We hope that this just gets information out that helps us make sure that our forces are ready. So if you don't have any questions, Secretary Robine, we're going to let you start off if you would. And we're going to give each of you about 5 minutes. Don't hold you hard and fast to that time period, but I know you've given us prepared remarks. We read those, and we've already gotten them. If you can, just talk to us for, take 30 seconds or 5 minutes, whatever you need, and tell us what you think are the most important things. You don't have to read those prepared remarks, but if it makes you more comfortable, feel free to do it. Ms. Secretary.
Let me thank you, Chairman Forbes, Congresswoman Bordello, distinguished subcommittee members. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk about the President's budget request for military construction and environmental programs. Let me throw out 3 numbers, and let me address 2 cross-cutting themes or cross-cutting priorities. First number, which Congresswoman Bordello mentioned, 14.8. That is our request for MILCON, family housing programs, and BRAC. That's down about $4 billion from last year, and as you say, that is predominantly due to the fact that we're nearing the end of the BRAC process. Second number, $17.9 billion. That's our request for sustainment and recapitalization of existing facilities. That number is up by about $4 billion due largely to the efforts by the Army and the Air Force to upgrade their existing facilities. Third number, $4.3 billion for environmental programs. That represents steady state, and it is a reflection of the maturity and stability, and I would say the success of our ongoing efforts in that area. The two cross-cutting themes, priorities that I want to briefly talk about: energy and then technology. In the energy area, and Mr. Chairman, I know this is a strong interest of yours, and I loved your op-ed, and I think you said it very, very well. In fact, I'm going to quote one sentence. Energy efficiency is often framed as an environmental issue, but it is first and foremost a national security issue, and that's very much how we think about it. It is important to the Department, the facility energy, for two reasons. The first is cost. We spend $4 billion a year on facility energy, and even by DoD standards, that's real money. Second is mission assurance. Our installations support combat operations more directly than ever before. We fly UAVs from our installations. We fly long-range bombers. We analyze battlefield intelligence data in real time. Our installations, in turn, depend on a commercial electricity grid that is vulnerable to potentially serious disruption. So that's the mission assurance part of our concern about energy. We have a multi-faceted strategy: reduce demand, expand supply of alternative energy sources, and improve our energy security. These efforts, I just want to reiterate, are not designed. They will green our military installations, but that's not the reason we're doing them. We're doing them because they will achieve significant cost savings and improve our mission assurance. We believe they're smart, with a couple of exceptions, and we can address the one that you mentioned, Mr. Chairman. These are smart investments that will pay for themselves over time, many times over. Second, I want to highlight technology. This is the Department's strong suit. This is why we're able to prevail in an operational setting, and the same is true in an installation setting. And let me give you two examples. The Department has a $17 billion bill for cleanup of unexploded ordnance, UXO. That's known ordnance above ground. That's not what's underwater. The reason it's so expensive is because we have not had the technology to distinguish between bombs and beer cans. We can't discriminate between unexploded ordnance and scrap metal. A program that I oversee has spent 10 years investing in industry and universities to develop the technology that can distinguish between bombs and beer cans, and we now have that technology. We need to demonstrate it in a lot of different settings in order to get regulatory buy-in, but we think that can save the Department between $10 and $12 billion. That's the power of technology. And let me give you another example. The same organization that has been so successfully investing in UXO discrimination technology 2 years ago began a program, a competitive program that uses our installations as a virtual testbed for next generation energy technology. These are technologies that have the potential to dramatically improve our energy performance, but that face major impediments to commercialization because of the unique nature of the building energy industry. We have been doing this for 2 years. For those technologies that succeed, that prove out in the demonstration, we can then go on and use our significant buying power as the Department to make a market for those technologies, much as we did with aircraft, electronics, and the Internet. We have about 40 projects underway, and we expect to have results beginning this year. So there's a lot of exciting work going on, and I didn't even mention BRAC, Guam, and construction costs, but I'm be delighted to talk with you about those. Thank you.
I think you can rest assured that you'll get an opportunity to do that as we move forward. Secretary Hammack.
Thank you, Congressman Forbes, or Chairman Forbes, Congressman Bordillo, and other distinguished members. Delighted to be here, and I want to thank you for your support of the Army over the years. Certainly, the three things that I want to talk about are BRAC, also efficiencies, and energy, as you both cited, were critical components, especially of interest to this committee. We are fighting two wars, and we have been working over the last several years to diligently support our forces with the facilities that they need in order to train and then to come back and reset from some of the challenges that they are facing. We are working to reduce our energy footprint and remain good stewards of the environment. So with all of those coming on at once, and then BRAC at the same time. And to the Army, BRAC was an $18 billion program, of which $13.5 billion was in construction. And doing that at the same time you're rotating the forces, as at the same time you're fighting the wars, has been an extreme challenge. We're closing 12 bases. We're closing 176 reserve installations and 211 guard closures. At the same time, we're creating 3 new 4-star headquarters and 8 joint and Army centers of excellence. At the same time, we have a sort of a new concept, which is the Armed Forces Reserve Centers, where we have both the Guard and Reserve in the same location. We have 125 of those we've stood up. And so these BRAC programs that we've been undertaking will return efficiencies and savings over the long term. But right now, we're still in the middle of it. We're coming to closure, and we are on target to meet the deadline. We have 6 projects which we consider high risk. One of those is Walter Reed Medical Center, and we want to ensure that we don't do anything that would jeopardize a soldier or any military personnel. So we're watching very closely to ensure that the new facilities we need are stood up and properly certified so that we can move our soldiers over and not jeopardize care. So that is probably the most critical to the Army that we're watching right now. But again, we are on target. The schedules are in place. We're just watching them very carefully. The efficiencies. I mean, I talked about the efficiencies through BRAC, but there's other efficiencies, one of which is under discussion with Secretary Gates. We deferred $1.4 billion in MILCON. And I know some have thought that that is a risk, and certainly we looked at it and we feel the projects that we deferred are low and medium risk to readiness. And I use the word deferred purposefully, because those projects that were deferred will recompete on a basis of need. And we're looking very closely at our facilities strategy to ensure that we are correcting capacity and condition. And those are two reasons to build new, in that you're overcrowded or you've moved a new unit in and they're in temporary structures and you need to build a facility, or that the condition is a very poor condition, or you have a roof collapsing, or there's a real need. So as we go forward, our military construction program is going to be much more closely scrutinized and evaluated with, as Dr. Robine pointed out, more focus on the restoration and modernization of existing facilities and using what we have now more prudently. We have had some bid savings in construction, and in those bid savings we've returned about $1 billion to the Treasury. We have retained some of the bid savings to help out in areas where there have been challenges or areas that were unanticipated. Some of these reprogramming are to repair storm damaged facilities, such as out at Fort Leonard Wood. We also had some freeze challenges in the southwestern United States over this winter. Or it can be to unanticipated challenges, and we have a couple of those we can talk about later. But as I said, we're reviewing our facility standards model also. What kind of facilities we're using. Is it the most prudent design? We're undertaking several simulations of the buildings to look at energy use. So we're really taking a whole new look at the way we do MILCON in the Army. Energy is very important to us. Reducing our energy use per square foot, more efficient structures, more efficient power generation, looking at reducing the amount of energy we use first, and then looking at repurposing energy, and last of all, generating energy. And doing it in a cost-effective manner is very important. So I don't want to take up too much time. I look forward to working closely with you and answering any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary Pfannenstiel.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Forbes, Congressman Bordallo, and members of the committee. I'm pleased to appear before you today to provide an overview of the Department of the Navy's investment in shore infrastructure. I did provide an extensive written statement. I won't go over that. I would just like to highlight a couple points from that statement. In overview, the Department's FY12 budget request includes a $13.3 billion investment in our installations. That includes military construction, sustainment, restoration, modernization, BRAC, family housing, environment, and base operating support. The military construction portion of that request of $2.5 billion is significantly less than our 2011 request of $3.9 billion, primarily due to the completion of the Marine Corps' barracks initiative and a more deliberate pace for the Guam buildup. The military construction budget, though, does include further investments to relocate the Marines from Okinawa to Guam. The Marine Corps relocation, with other Department of Defense efforts to align forces and capabilities at Guam, represents a unique opportunity to strategically realign the U.S. force posture in the Pacific for the next 50 years. This is a major effort and one that we must get right for both the military families and the people of Guam. I'm pleased to share with you that we recently achieved an important milestone in the realignment, the finalization of the programmatic agreement. After 3 years of consultations, we may now move forward with executing military construction associated with the realignment and preparing a record of decision for the training ranges. Fostering a long-term positive relationship with the people of Guam is essential to the success of the Marine Corps mission in the Pacific. The finalization of the programmatic agreement is evidence that the government of Guam and the Department of Defense can work closely together on solutions. This is an important year for the realignment program. As Congresswoman Bordallo pointed out, construction is imminent and additional contracts will be awarded over the next several weeks and months at a sustainable pace that Guam can support. Building on the fiscal year 10 and 11 projects, the projects we're proposing in fiscal year 12 enable future vertical construction, support the introduction of off-island workers, and support future operations. Further, the government of Japan's fiscal year 11 budget includes financing for critical utilities projects that will support relocating Marines in the long run and the ramp-up of construction in the near term. The Department is on track to implement the BRAC 2005 realignments and closures by the statutory deadline of September 15th. Going forward, our fiscal year 12 budget request of $26 million enables ongoing environmental restoration, caretaking, and property disposal at BRAC 2005 installations. The Department has made significant progress in the past year and to date has completed 328 of the 485 realignment and closure actions as specified in our business plans. Additionally, the Department of the Navy has increased its investment to support President Obama's energy challenge and Secretary Mavis's aggressive energy goals to increase energy security, reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, and to promote good stewardship. We have requested $1.2 billion in fiscal year 12 and $4.4 billion across the FIDUP for shore and operational energy efficiencies. Members of the committee, your support of the Department's fiscal year 12 budget request will ensure that we build and maintain the facilities that our sailors and Marines need to succeed in their military and humanitarian missions, even as the challenges we face multiply. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. Secretary Yonkers.
Chairman Forbes, Congresswoman Bordallo, and members of the House Armed Services Committee, first of all, let me say thanks for the invitation to be here today and have the chance to talk to you about the Air Force's military construction, family housing, environmental BRAC, and sustainment restoration modernization programs. And I'd like to start off by saying thank you also for the hard work last week to get us through this critical juncture on the business of shutting down the government, and looking forward to the next critical step, and that's the continuation for the appropriations that we're going to need to execute our fiscal year 11 programs. The Air Force's fiscal year 12 budget includes $2 billion for construction and BRAC. 1.4 of that is for military construction, $500 million is for family housing, and $125 million is for legacy BRAC, and most of that is going into environmental cleanup. BRAC 2005, our most recent BRAC round, as with the Navy, we are on target to hit all of the statutory goals by the September 15th deadline. Out of the 400 or so separate actions that we have in our business plan, we are at about 320 right now, and we don't expect any hiccups in the eventuality of fulfilling all of those. Our budget is $3.8 billion, and we are staying within that budget for BRAC 2005. I want to talk a little bit about sustainment, restoration, and modernization. Our fiscal year 12 budget request is for about $3 billion for SRM. $2 billion of that is for sustainment. The remainder is for restoration and modernization. Now, I know there has been some concern about the investment in sustainment, and that is $300 million less than it was in fiscal year 2011. But I want to tell you, over the course of the last few years, we've taken a look to try to get more efficient and identify requirements more vigilantly with regards to sustainment. And so we're looking at this from a business point of view, we're looking at it from a return on investment point of view, we're looking at it from a better contracting point of view, and we're also infusing dollars into demolition and consolidation that, by virtue of reducing our footprint in our facilities, that we will also reduce the investment that we need to put into sustainment. At the same time, we're increasing our dollar investment in restoration and modernization. I want to talk a little bit, as have my cohorts, about efficiencies. We all recognize how critical it is to deal with deficits and debts, and we're all in it with you together here. Congresswoman Bordallo asked about some of the efficiencies. So let me tell you about a few of the ones that the Air Force has implemented. Over the FIDEP, for example, through this SRM reduction in the facility sustainment in particular, we're looking at a $1.6 billion reduction in the cost. As we looked at our weapon system sustainment, we looked at efficiencies on the order of $3 billion over the FIDEP in doing business better in our weapon systems. In our environmental cleanup program, we've refocused our efforts on closing sites and using innovative contracting mechanisms like performance-based restoration. We're expecting, as has the Army already experienced, somewhere on the order of a 30 to 40% reduction in our overall cleanup program through the FIDEP, based on a $500 million investment that we're using right today. Likewise, we've also taken a look at our environmental impact analysis process. And we're going to be looking at that from a get back to basics point of view, looking at the Council on Environmental Quality guidelines and streamlining the process. We're expecting to find somewhere between $10 and $15 million a year from that. Point I'm trying to make is that every day we wake up, we look at what is it that we need to do to get a bit more efficient than we have in the past. And there's nothing in the portfolio that we're not looking at. I want to talk a little bit about energy, if you will allow me as well. We're using the smart tools, as we've seen across the department, with regards to finding better efficiencies in our facilities, and have actually achieved a 33% reduction in the last 7 or 8 years, even though costs of business have increased. We're utilizing LEED Silver standards to increase efficiency for all our new buildings. And in operational energy, ma'am, we're looking at $700 million savings over the FIDEP and looking at better ways of reducing loads in the way we fly, the routes that we fly, and our utilization of jet fuel. Our goal for the Air Force is 10%. That will equate to about $700 million per year once we are able to achieve that goal. So I want to stop it at that point in time, and I want to say thank you very much again for your strong support of the United States Air Force over the past and what you do for our airmen, and I also look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Secretary Yonkers, and I want to thank all of you for your testimonies, and I always defer my questions until the end so the members can ask theirs, and hopefully they've covered everything. But I'm going to start with just one question for you, any of you that want to take it. And I want to begin where Secretary Yonkers left off. He said, there's not a day that you don't ask the question, what is it we need to do to be more efficient than we were in the past? And as all of you know, we're wrestling with budget cuts every place we look and so-called efficiencies and things that are taking place. I saw a story the other day that somebody was telling me about when somebody opened a fuel tank and they couldn't tell how much fuel that was in there. So they took the top off and lit a match to see. I don't have to tell you it wasn't a happy ending. And I remember when they told me, I said, tell me that's not true. And they said, I hate to tell you, it was true. We're going to have some questions later that talks about the fact that when DOD budgets for a facility, it's normally as much as 40% more than the private sector would do. That's something we just say, tell us that's not true. We have a Navy project we're going to talk about in a little while that has, the IG says has a 447-year return on investment. And we know that may not be totally true, but anywhere in those parameters, we're going to say, tell me that's not true. But here's the question. Right before I came over here, I got handed some information on the Mark Center down here. You know, Albatross we're looking at, we don't have the infrastructure, we might not get in there and be able to use it. And we've got information breaking that we're thinking about spending $600,000 for a statue, one of the finalists being a ferry riding a toad. To the American people, that's just as foolish as if we open that tank and hold a match over. I'm just going to say, tell me that's not true. We're not, with all these cuts, that we're not spending $600,000 for a statue in front of that center, especially when one of the, I don't care if it's Ronald Reagan shaking hands with Bill Clinton. I mean, it's still $600,000 of money that people are going to go live it over. Can you shed some light on that story? Is it accurate, or?
I can certainly shed some light on it, and it is, I think, entertaining to all of us that sometimes the media picks the that which will gain the most attention.
That one has.
And the fact that it broke on April Fool's Day,
so it's not
made
true.
It much more interesting. That was a submitted entry in a competition run by the City of Alexandria. In the development of the Transportation Center, which is the public face of the Mark Center, the City of Alexandria said, you need to do something. It's concrete walls. It looks like a bomb shelter. You need to do something. Can you dress it up? And they referenced the GSA art initiative, which is 0.5% of construction cost goes toward some sort of public art. So we took a look at it and came up with a much lower figure of not to exceed $600,000 for some sort of mural and potentially a statue in the transportation center, and a competition was set up. That was one of the submittals. We are taking a look at all of the submittals. We're also taking a look at some of the offers we've had of more military-themed statuary that could go there, but we are looking at some sort of mural on the wall.
But wasn't that more than just a submittal? Wasn't it one of the 4 finalists?
The artists were demonstrating their capability for artwork, and that was a demonstration of the kind of artwork that artist
and I don't want to blame this. We had a lot of other issues. The only thing I just want to let you know is when we don't even have the roads to go to that building, we may not be able to occupy it. And when we tell the public, I'm just telling you what we're wrestling with. When we tell the public we're going to spend $600,000, I don't care what we're beautifying. I mean, you know, when we could put that to infrastructure to get there, it's a hard sell for us. And we're over here fighting for you guys. And I'm not blaming any of you. I know this is out of your hands. But I'm just saying that's a tough thing for us to have to go back and argue we can't make cuts when we're spending that kind of money for statutes. Ms. Bordallo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Maybe we can get some private donations for such artwork. I know, I just saw it. First of all, I want to ask a couple of questions here, and I would like to start, Mr. Chairman, by asking a few questions for my good friend, Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. She is a member of the Readiness Committee, and she has consistently been a champion on Capitol Hill for DOD energy efforts. She was also the author of the DOD Energy Security Act. So this is for any of the witnesses. I think maybe Dr. Robine, you might be able to answer this. I know Gabby applauds the service's proactive development of strategic thought toward energy and how it is used. She would like to ensure the DOD has all the resources and permissions required to continue your efforts. However, some issues remain. So who and where is the single agency responsible for DOD's operational energy research and development? How does DOD disseminate lessons learned and best practices for operational energy projects? And do you think that if DOD had a formal process that all service members with boots on the ground would be equipped with, a solar portable alternative communication energy system, or SPACES, or a rucksack enhanced portable power system, or REPS-like capability? So if you could just enlighten me on those three.
Yes. I met with Congresswoman Giffords last year, a year ago, January, and I know that Senator Udall is working with her to reintroduce the Energy Security Act, which I think is terrific. And we worked fairly extensively with her staff over the course of a couple of months last year, one member of whom is here today. Most of her questions pertain to operational energy, and within that's actually a separate person in the Department of Defense, Sharon Burke. You all created the position of Assistant Secretary for Operational Energy, and we nominated and the Senate confirmed Sharon Burke. She's been on board about a year now and doing a terrific job of being the OSD person who heads up that. Each of the services is being very, very active. And so, for example, Jackie can talk about the amazing things that the Marines are doing in their expeditionary, their XFOB at Quantico, and the technology they're taking to theater. But the single point of contact cutting across the department is Sharon Burke in this newly created office, and it's gotten a lot of visibility. We put on an Energy Awareness Day this year, and Chairman Mullen, among others, came and spoke very, very passionately about it. So it has really, I think, it's a very, very high priority for the department, and I think the services are working very closely to share lessons learned on it. I'm not sure, I don't think I can speak to the issue of whether there are authorities or resources that we need that we don't have. I'll let my colleagues
I think a follow-up question would be, could you explain what fiscal efficiencies would be gained from a department-level research and development effort similar to the Marine Corps which was what you were talking about, experimental forward operating base?
I think, let me take, you want to?
And that came out of a joint effort. Out at Fort Irwin, the services got together, and so it was work on tents, it was work on operational energy, it was work on generator, it was work on power distribution, and the services got together. You talk about the rucksack enhanced power system, REPS, which is called Spaces in the Marines. It's the same system, we just have two different names. The Army's deployed several hundred of them. The Marines have deployed several of them as well. It's the same system. It's a shared system that we're both using. So there are some great work, joint work that is going on between the services on operational energy.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Vanistil?
Yes, let me just add that the part of this is homegrown within the services. They find needs. And with the Marines, they've offered a couple rounds now where they've asked for technology providers who might be able to meet their needs in theater to come to Quantico or to 29 Palms and demonstrate what they have. And in a couple of these cases, I think it's really telling that from the first demonstration at Quantico or 29 Palms, the Marines then take the technologies that seem the best fit for their needs and try them out in some test form, and then they're in theater in some cases in 6 months or 8 months. I mean, it's
very good.
And then they share this across the services so that they are all understanding the technologies.
Thank you. And Dr. Yonkers, did you want to add?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the chance. You probably are well aware of the efforts that we all have underway with regards to alternative fuels, and particularly synthetics and bios and cellulosics. And I think it's fair to say that we spend a fair amount of time talking to each other and sharing information about how we can look at alternative fuels and the certification process that we're utilizing right now for our jet aircraft. I mentioned the $700 million efficiencies that we've already identified, and the 700 that we will try to get to. Part of it's hinged on the utility or using biofuels and synthetic fuels as a replacement for fossil fuels in our aircraft. And Jackie and I have been speaking closely about this because the Navy and the Marine Corps fly aircraft like we fly aircraft, and also with Catherine because we have tactical vehicles that could use the same fuel.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I have another question for another one of my colleagues. This is on behalf of my good friend, Congressman Sam Farr. Dr. Robine, can your office assist with joint civilian-military projects which also need coordination between active and reserve units who wish to perform an innovative readiness training program that will have positive benefits on the environment? Is that a yes or a no? Yes, you can. Well, okay. For example, there is a situation in Congressman Farr's district concerning the removal of the San Clemente Dam and redirecting the Carmel River that would provide a training opportunity for National Guardsmen or reservists. The dam removal project is an effort that seems bogged down in bureaucracy, despite its benefits, such as training for the service members, removal of a hazardous dam, and restoration of key fish habitat. The land in question is slated to be conveyed to the BLM once the dam is gone. It is rare that our service members have this kind of real-life training opportunity. So I know that this type of innovative readiness training has been done in California before, especially along the border with construction of a new fence. So can you work with me and Congressman Farr to see if there is a way to give our National Guardsmen or reservists the practice and training they need in real life, real time, while at the same time using your expertise on DoD environmental issues to establish civilian-military collaborations like at the San Clemente Dam? And what can be done in this situation or others like it?
Yes, I'd be happy to work with you and Congressman Farr.
All right.
that.
Thank you very
I'll
much.
take that as a question for the record.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I do have my own questions, but I'll wait for the second round.
Thank you, Madeline. That's kind of you. I would like to now recognize the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Lobiondo, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much, and to our panel, thank you for being here today and for the work you do on behalf of our nation. For Dr. Robine, as you have stated previously, the U.S. Department of Defense has set aggressive goals to procure 7.5% of its electricity from renewable energy by 2013 and 25% by 2025. As the price of oil continues to skyrocket due to the conflicts in the Middle East and for other reasons, replacing costly fossil fuels with proven and effective renewable energy technologies is a necessary move for the taxpayers, for their pocketbook, and for our nation's security. I think it's a big homeland security issue. As the world's largest consumer of energy, spending over $20 billion a year, as I understand it, DOD has a special responsibility to lead by example when greening the government. Its enormous purchasing power helped create new market for renewable energy technology projects, making them more affordable for everything. However, when the department makes its renewable energy procurement decisions, are the implications of those purchases on our nation's energy security considered when those are made? And there will be one more question here. New Jersey is the 6th largest solar market in the world, and within the United States, the 2nd largest, only behind California. A lot of people don't realize that. The solar sector is one of the segments in New Jersey's economy that is growing, bringing with it jobs. As such, I'm interested to know if the DOD is purchasing foreign manufactured solar panels. And if the answer is yes, were American manufactured options considered in such instances? If yes, why were they rejected? And also, what efforts, if any, is the department taking to provide the proper guidance to the energy managers on the ground to at least consider American renewable technology in their procurement portfolios?
Thank you. Thanks for the question. We certainly are taking security into account when we think about renewable projects. I'm not saying we have not in the past been compliance oriented. We are. We've got goals. We're trying to meet those goals, but particularly in the renewable area, we look at them with an eye to will this enhance the security of an installation when combined with other investments, in particular microgrid technology, where we're doing a lot of fairly cutting edge work. The combination of microgrid technology, renewables, and storage capacity, again, that's cutting edge technology, but will allow us to island, to separate off critical, not necessarily the entire installation, but critical missions on an installation. And we increasingly see that as an important thing to be able to do in order to assure our mission. You would be surprised how many stories we hear about an installation that lost. Yes, I'm sorry.
Excuse me for interrupting, and I want to be responsible to the time,
yes,
and we're winding down. The question I'm interested to know is DOD purchasing foreign manufactured solar panels?
My understanding, there is new legislation for Buy America. I think the reason that legislation was passed was because without it, most purchases would not be of.
Well, so the answer is
it's a cost issue.
Okay, so we rejected buying American-made solar panels because they were more expensive. Is that what you're telling us?
Yes, that's my understanding. Can anybody else?
Congressman, I can say that we in the Department of the Navy have looked very carefully, and we will be buying American solar panels. I can't tell you whether there are any that are currently have been bought in the past from non-American companies, but going forward, they will all be American produced.
And from the Army standpoint, I was just out at an installation that's doing a groundbreaking on a 1 megawatt power plant, and they are panels that are made in the United States. They're actually made in New Jersey.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Thank you again to our panel.
And if we could just ask all of our panelists, if they don't mind, if you could just check and for the record submit to the gentleman from New Jersey if we have been purchasing any in the past. Would that answer your
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That would be very helpful.
Gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Kissel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our panelists for coming, and especially Dr. Robine. Good to see you again. I would not be fair in not saying that you have been very forthcoming in working with us in the BRAC operation down at Fort Bragg, where we have 2 of the 4-star commands coming in, and still face a lot of challenges as we look towards finishing this up in terms on the base and also within the community. And we probably still have some conversations in that area forthcoming. A gentleman named Richard Kidd came to my office not long ago as Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army for Energy and Sustainability. Where does he fit in the Secretary Hammock? Where does he fit in terms of the reporting structure?
He works for me.
Okay. Well, I thought maybe that was the case, and we had good conversations. One of the concerns that I brought to him and had talked to Mr. Chairman, actually somebody else, Jamie Lynch on our committee, is that the fact that there are ideas out there that we think or we may see as Congress people that we think are pretty good. And we may not know how they compare to others, but we like to be able to show that to our committee staff or to have you guys look at it, because as good as you are, I doubt if you can see everything. And just wondering, what might y'all's process be for when there are ideas being brought to you that maybe that little guy, that they may not have the name or the background that might normally catch your attention real quickly, but they have some pretty good ideas. What is your response, and how does that fit in? And this is something that Mr. Kidd and I spent quite a bit of time talking about.
In the Army, we have RDECOM that's up in Aberdeen, and that what they do is they do a lot of filtering, that they take in a lot of different technologies and do a look at them and test them in comparison with other things, and if it looks like it's worthwhile, then it might go from their bench testing to a larger scale testing on an installation.
Right, and I'm not going to ask each of the members, but as different things might come your way, I do ask that we be open to this process, because we never know where that next best mousetrap may be, and because it may not come from the normal way. And sometimes I think we get set in our patterns of purchasing and procurements and where we expect things to come from, and we may not, say, gee, maybe. I've seen everything I want to see for a while, and sometimes I guess you could reach that point, but please be open to that process, because it's not about selling somebody's, we're not salespeople for businesses, but, when we see ideas, that's what made this nation great. And I would like to emphasize the idea of American ideas. So many times we tend maybe not to recognize and reward those folks in America as much as we should. Secretary Hammock, you mentioned something about there were 5 or 6 things you were watching to make sure that they did happen, and you mentioned one being Walter Reed. I'm curious, what are the others?
3 of them are National Guard or Reserve facilities. One of those facilities has had unfortunate ground conditions in that the ground was prepared, and the next morning we went out there and there was a big sinkhole. And so we did additional soil testing and filled that sinkhole and got ready to start again, and I was just informed over the weekend that several more appeared. So we're not sure what's going on at that site, but it might be a non-buildable site, and we might have to find a new one. We're trying to figure out what's the best thing to do, because we certainly don't want to put up a building that's going to sink. We have some renovations that are going on over at Fort Belvoir, and those buildings are sort of waiting to be renovated until the group that is there moves to their next location. And so it's sort of the domino effect. When their facilities are ready, they move in. We renovate their facilities so the next group can move in. And it's a very tight schedule. We're watching it very closely. We think we will make it, but we don't want to do anything that would not make sense. And we want to be prudently watching the dollars and watching the deadlines. We are watching Mark Center, which is ready for occupancy August 9th, and looking at the move schedule and to see how many people can move in there in that time, and that's something that's being handled by the DOD and OSD on the move schedule. So those are, I think I named all three then.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Larry. The gentlelady from Missouri, Ms. Hartzler, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank you, Secretary Hammack, for your work helping with Fort Leonard Wood after the tornado. That was very, very obviously destructive, and we're very thankful there wasn't any loss of life there. But I've been in close contact with General Quantock, and he's assured me that you all have been working on that and able to supply the funds to help rebuild. And I know they're going to come back even stronger. I know General Casey's been very supportive of that, and hopefully, are we still on track? Maybe by the end of this year, having that up and back and running. Fully functioning?
We're still on track. I won't say everything will be done by the end of the year, but we are working to ensure that we don't sacrifice mission.
Mm-hmm. I had talked, I know, with General Quantock about the building storm shelters. I have a little bit of experience growing up in the Midwest with tornadoes. When I was in high school, my whole grandparents' entire farm and their house, and anyway, was lost in a tornado. Thankfully, they barely made it to the basement. But I've seen firsthand that devastation, and I was shocked after the tornado to learn that all of the housing was on slabs. There was no storm shelters in the community. All the training sites had no storm shelters, and that is the case in other installations, I've come to find out. But I understand that you all are re-looking at that and trying to be proactive, and we can learn from this. What steps are taken now with storm shelter building after the tornado?
That's something we're taking a look at. We're taking a look overall at climate change impacts, whether there might be increased risk of storm or increased risk of earthquake or other mitigation strategies we need to implement. But certainly tornado shelters are one of those, and I think it's certainly made us all aware of the need for it. We do have great training programs on the base, and that's one of the things that helped out in that situation. No loss of life, but we are evaluating if we need to take some other steps there to ensure that we are more protected for the future.
Yes, I would just like to advocate that. I don't think tornadoes are because of climate change. In the Midwest, we've had them forever. But anyway, I think that's just common sense there. But I did want to just ask all of the panel about BRAC. I know you're just wrapping up the 2005 BRACs. And do you anticipate, have you heard any move afoot to have any more BRACs in the future?
We have not asked for authorization for another BRAC. I think we are focused very single-mindedly on trying to get through the current one and meet our current deadlines.
Very good. Okay, everybody okay with that? Just in the final question regarding the 2005 BRAC situation there, I know there's 30 BRAC recommendations yet to be completed within 3 months of the completion date, and you all are considering 6 projects at high risk of being able to complete that. So I just wondered, what steps is the department taking and what cost to complete all these recommendations by September of this year?
Catherine just reviewed some of the key ones. We are focusing on trying to meet the deadline in every case. We are determined to satisfy our legal obligation, but we are certainly not going to put patient safety at risk. So, for example, one of the ones we're watching closely is the move from Walter Reed to Bethesda, and we absolutely will not. We think that we are in on schedule on that one, but should something go wrong, we do have only a small margin. We will absolutely not do anything to jeopardize patient safety. And as a matter of fact, under the law, we can't do that. We have to certify that Bethesda has the capability to receive the soldiers from Walter Reed before we can move them.
Yeah, that's good to know. I mean, wounded warriors obviously are a high priority for all of us. We want to make sure they have the utmost care. And being new, I wasn't here in 2005. Is there a penalty? I know there's a goal, September of 2011, but what happens if you aren't able to make it?
It's a legal obligation. We're not concerned about a fine, but it's a legal obligation, and the department has never missed a BRAC deadline through 5 rounds. I will say that this is the biggest one we've had, 222 actions, but I think more important, there was a conscious decision by the department around 2006 to move the implementation to the right for budget reasons. So we are implementing this BRAC round systematically later in the 6-year implementation phase or implementation period than we have the earlier BRAC rounds, and so that's why we are coming so close to the deadline on a number of these.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for your service and testimony today. It's nice to see 2 graduates of University of Hartford graduate programs doing so well and serving our country. I actually want to follow up with Congresswoman Hartzler's question because this is not just sort of an academic question that she asked. There was a speech given in Boston by Senator Kerry, who was telling the audience that New England has to start getting ready for a BRAC round in 2015 or a BRAC process in 2015. Undersecretary Robine, you said again that there's nothing that is in the works right now. There's no request. I'd actually would appreciate it if the other witnesses could just confirm that as well. So again, Secretary Mabus was very strong before committee a couple weeks ago. But again, I just would, for the record, ask that all of you just indicate whether there is anything
There
happening.
is no Army request. As Dr. Robine said, we are focused on completing the round that we have right now and would sort of like to take a deep breath after we complete it.
And Congressman, we have no intention, the Navy has no intention of seeking another BRAC.
Congressman, the same thing is true for the Air Force. We're focusing on what it is that we need to complete right now, but I will also say that we still have excess infrastructure. So it would be not preferable, it would be of use to us, I think, if we look down that road farther, a reduction through another base realignment closure.
Would gentlemen yield?
Yes.
Let me just suggest you not look too far to this committee because I don't think we would be very receptive to another round of BRAC, and I think that's what Ms. Hartzler and Mr. Courtney are trying to convey. And yield back the gentleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have only gotten some sort of updates in terms of the net savings through this process, and frankly, I think a lot of us are going to be looking at that very closely. I mean, in theory, there's probably always excess capacity, but the question is really whether this process is generating much in terms of real savings down the road. And why don't we just set that subject aside? Because I actually have another question for you, Mr. Yonkers, which is that your budget that was submitted for 2012 for Air National Guard has a 40% reduction for facilities for Air National Guard. We, again, have a new mission in Connecticut for the C-17s, which is going to require some new facilities. The fit-up at this point is looking at 2015 for those facilities, and they're expecting to get those planes in 2013. So I can tell from the look on your face I may be hitting you with something a little too unexpected, and if you want to answer for the record. But frankly, there is some concern about just where your budget is and in terms of the requirements for the C-17 missions, not just in Connecticut, but I believe it's 5 other states that are slated to get that project from the Air National Guard.
Well, sir, I'm confused because our budget for the Air Guard this year is actually pretty robust. They're actually getting about 14% of the total military construction budget, which is about $1.4 billion. I'm not aware of any detriment or any issues with regards to the C-17 in particular.
C-27.
C-27.
Yeah, the air cargo.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to take it for the record.
Okay, and that's fine. But there is obviously some concern about the way the numbers. And again, if I'm wrong, that's even better. But if you could help us with that, that would be much appreciated.
You bet.
And again, I just would, in terms of some of the prior questions about energy efficiencies, we just cut the ribbon on a new submarine learning center in Groton recently, which had geothermal as part of the installation, which actually everybody was just so excited about it. But again, Secretary Mavis testified before committee, again, a couple weeks ago about every $10 per barrel is a $300 million price tab for the Navy. I mean, obviously, that no one wants to spend money on that if we don't have to. So those efforts, I think, are for the taxpayer, and setting aside any environmental reasons. So just wanted to at least go on the record saying that we're seeing real tangible results with your efforts. So congratulations. And I would yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We are going to have a series of votes. I don't know if how our panelists are on time, but Mrs. Mordallo has asked to come back because she has a number of questions. Some of our members may. Would that be too great of emphasis? We apologize for that inconvenience, and unfortunately it could be as much as 50 minutes. I just wanted to know. Mr. Schilling, we're going to yield to you for 5 minutes, and then we're going to leave, and we will come back for any members that want to ask questions after that. Mr. Schilling.
Thank you, Chairman. And I won't need my full 5 minutes because my colleagues here have already asked the questions on bracking. I just wanted to delve in a little bit more onto basically the Made in American and how we buy product and how we do the pricing. One of the things that was brought to my attention, and I'm from the district that we represent, the Rock Island Arsenal. So when we hear that we have no plans for bracking right now, that's music to our ears. But I had a gentleman that came to me, and he makes tools for a living. He has a firm in Milan, Illinois, and he indicated to me that we had the Made in USA, and basically the toolbox was made in America, but everything inside of it was not. And I'm one of those people where I buy everything I can made in America, and I guess can you kind of give me an idea of how that works? I'm pretty new to this also, and any help you can give me would be appreciated.
Well, I don't know that I can give you a definitive answer, but let me say we have gained an enormous amount as a country from the international trading system. We had done very well in selling our goods overseas, and that requires us in turn to buy goods from other countries, and consumers benefit from that as well. We have trade laws, which by which we are bound, which protect us but require us to not discriminate in favor of U.S. products. My understanding is that in the case of the solar panels, that at least with respect to China, which is where many of them are coming from, and maybe wind turbines as well, that they have not signed the international agreement that under which we said we would buy products from that country. So even trade sticklers would say that there is that legally under international trade law we are justified in buying at least non-Chinese products.
Okay. That's a good enough answer. And then lastly, I just wanted to thank you because I know you're all sincerely dedicated to the cause, and I just want to thank you for your service also. So with that, I yield back.
Could I just follow up real quickly on what Mr. Schilling said? Would it be possible for you to submit for the record, we don't expect you to have it, an explanation, or perhaps send somebody back to his office to brief him on that policy? And the reason is because we understand it with a lot of our agencies, but with DOD, one of the things we're concerned about, if we get in a conflict, we want to make sure that some other country doesn't cut off the supply, and I think that's what Mr. Schilling is concerned about. So if you'd either submit it for the record or contact his office and just have him briefed on that. Chris, did you have a quick question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to submit for the record because I'm not going to be able to come back.
Just a 60-second, and then we're going to get Mr. Scott. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Apologize for not being here earlier. So I'll look forward to reading the transcripts on energy efficiencies, and particularly interested in for modular nuclear reactors, where the department is going forward. Hearing your views on that, and then the question for the record. I'm concerned about the deaths at Fort Bragg. I know that this is partially in your lane and it cuts across others, but with regard to military construction environment, 12 deaths there, 3 in one home. Certainly have great personal experience with PACERN. Very responsible. I found them in my time that our family lived at Fort Bragg, but I'm especially concerned about these deaths and would like to be kept apprised of what the investigations are going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Yonkers, I will not be able to come back after the series of votes, but I represent Robins Air Force Base, and I would appreciate it if we could schedule some time for you to come by. I'd like to discuss the 30% reduction that's, as I understand it, across the board for the Air Force in energy consumption with the September 30th of 2015, I believe it is, deadline. And I'd like to, I just like more details on that, how that number was derived, and how we intend to get there. Certainly, manufacturing installations are very different than other installations may be, and we just appreciate your time. If we could schedule that, and Jim Dalbo, my staff, is in the back. Maybe.
Congressman Scott, we'd be delighted to come by and talk to you some more about that.
Thank you, sir.
Steve, do you have any questions? Do you want to come back, or are you okay? Okay. Then we're going to have some of our members submit questions for the record. I'm told Mrs. Bordallo is still in a markup and will be a while getting back. I've got a number of questions I'm just going to submit to you for the record. Please answer them, though. Don't, because they're things we need for our markup when we get them. So we'll submit those to you, and if you just be kind enough to submit those for the record, then we don't have to hold you and bring you back, and I know that'll be good news to you. Thank you guys so much for taking your time and being with us. And with that, if no one has any follow-up questions, we're adjourned.